now going to open up the questions for anybody online. Feel free to send a question through the Q&A or the chat, and I can read that out for you for any of the panelists. I am going to go first with Professor Jamie Wilkinson. Professor, you described the way in which your technology had found ore bodies retrospectively or theoretically, things like El Teniente and Resolution, the big porphyries of Codelco and Rio Tinto BHP. What about current companies with which you're working to find porphyries today, to give us some real life examples?
Yeah, so we're actively working in the Load Lab in London, generating data for Rio Tinto, BHP, and Anglo American, and we have also done work with First Quantum in porphyry space. So the way this works is the companies are sending samples into the labs. We do the analysis, deliver the data back to them, and then if they want additional consulting interpretation, then that's kind of like an add-on that they can ask for, which I then do. So we've been working on a lot of different exploration projects. I've probably looked at about 25 or so different project areas, not just with those companies, with a couple of other juniors as well. And there is a lot of application. We can't say at the present time what discoveries and what follow-up drilling and so on is being made in the projects that we've worked on for commercial reasons. So it's not like a clear case of a major discovery has been made where this technique's been used, but certainly the major companies are confident enough in its power and utility that they are applying it widely in their exploration programs. And I should say, I did emphasize this morning, it's not just about, the bit I emphasized in my talk was about the vectoring, the targeting the center of the system, but there's also information on the potential endowment of the system, the amount of mineralization that's there. So we have some discrimination tools which are about 90% successful based on the data we have at the present time of identifying tier 1 systems from the green rock mineral chemistry. So if you have the right sampling distribution, you can have a lot of confidence that you're in a major system from certain characteristics of the chemistry that we're measuring.
Interesting. Roger, I can see you moving around there. Did you want to ask something of Professor?
I had a question for Claudia when we're ready.
Sure. Yeah, over to you, Roger.
Claudia, many thanks for the presentation. Looking at tenement, it looks like there's potential for clusters on your tenement, and you mentioned about looking at Dillard and doing some work. You've got work to do there. I just wondered if you could expand a little bit on the work that you've got and when you might come to drill Dillard and potentially the other anomalies that you've got on your tenement. I just, for juniors, when they get onto something, that cluster potential seems really quite important.
That's a good question. Thank you, Roger. Well, from all we can tell now, from all the data tells us now, is that we're probably looking at several porphyry centers on our property. So where we are at the gate zone, that appears to be a center. We have very similar targets in other areas of the project, such as Dillard. And I mentioned before that I'm on my way to the project this afternoon. We actually have a technical powwow planned over the next couple of days where we will sit down, Chris Taylor, myself, Jeff Ward and Andy Barry, our VP Exploration and VP Operations, and plan the next stage of work and where we'll drill and how much we'll drill. That's at the moment still very much in flux because obviously our big discovery is only a couple of weeks old, and we will for sure drill more at the gate zone because obviously these results are must follow up results. As I said, Dillard is also on our list. In fact, we had planned to drill at Dillard this summer. Our drill program, the last hole was supposed to go into a target at Dillard. That's a very similar target to the one we drilled successfully at Gate. But then when we had so much success at Gate and saw what we drilled, we of course didn't move the drill rig. So that target is still there, and it's on our list, and we'll get there hopefully relatively soon.
Thank you. And how many rigs do you have there at the moment?
We are still with one rig, and we'll keep going with that now, and are looking into how to scale up the program. So we will, in the new year, add another rig and potentially more.
Absolutely fantastic. Claudia, thank you very much. And Dan, if we've still got Dan there, I was just wondered if you might be able to expand on your drilling program. You seem to have a whole load of potential to drill there. I just wondered if you might be able to give us a little description of plans going forward for the various targets. Dan, if you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Simon. So the first 3 holes that we announced, those were drilled with 1 rig. We're currently drilling with 3 rigs, and we've reserved an additional 3 rigs for 6 rigs in total that we have potential to add to the drilling program by the end of the year. So that decision hasn't been made, but we're currently drilling with 3 rigs, which was the program that we decided upon. 40,000 meters of drilling, enough drilling to drill at a 100-meter spacing, 40 holes, 1,000-meter depth, to fully define the volume that we have based on the footprint of Warintza Central.
Thank you. And when Dan, when are you going to get the geophysics back? When's that due?
So we're working on QA/QC right now, and then obviously we'll get into interpretation, at least 1 round of interpretation, but that'll probably be completed in the next month or so. And certainly we'll have a good indication from what we're seeing early on in that process of what the target is to be at Kaya. It's not so relevant for the porphyries because they're right at surface, so you don't need to do a lot of thinking about where to drill.
Are they all similarly eroded?
The level of emplacement seems to be similar between central, west, and south, and then east may be a little bit deeper. So it may be that we're a bit higher in the system at east, but certainly it looks like with the first 3 that I mentioned, we're just kind of right at the top of the let's call it transitional between phyllic and potassic. So right at the top of the kind of the ore, the ore bearing part of the system.
Great, Dan. Thank you very much. Claudia, if you're there, I've got one other question for you. I did notice all focus seems to be on MPD at the moment, but of course Mojave, which is just down the road from the Baghdad mine, I think historically it's had about 25 meters at 0.7%. At what stage might this come into drilling, or are you just purely focused on MPD at the moment?
At the moment, MPD is of course our priority. We had originally, at the start of this year, planned to also do an exploration program and drill at Mojave, but for now we have our hands full, or more than full actually, with MPD, and that takes priority. Having said that, we really like Mojave. It is an excellent project, very similar in many ways to MPD. It's also in a great district right next to the big Baghdad copper mine owned by Freeport, right off a highway, with some interesting historic results, lots of smoke, but not figured out yet. So in many ways similar to MPD, and lots of discovery potential. So we have it. I always call it our joker in the back pocket. And we want to drill it, and at the moment focus is on MPD, but as soon as we have MPD scaled up and staffed up and all, then we'll get to Mojave as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia.
Claudia, I've got some questions coming through on the chat for you here, if I can just read those out. I've got 2 questions which are related, one from Sylvain Clave and one from Terence Ortslin. Sylvain asks, when are your next holes due to be released? And Terence asks, how late are the assays running, which I guess are related.
Our next set of results, we expect to be able to release before the end of October. So we will release a batch of several holes together. And likely that, in the next 2 weeks, so before the end of October will be the next batch, and then at least one more results released before the end of the year, and possibly 2. That's sort of a news flow expectation.
Thank you. Professor Wilkinson, I don't know if you can see you see the question on there from John Seron on the chat? I'll read it out to you.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I was just kind of starting to type a little bit in, but yeah, so we've done, most of our work's been done on porphyry systems worldwide.
Maybe if you read the question out first, would you like me to do
that?
that?
Sorry, yeah. So the question is, the studies of the green rock environment, is it only related to porphyry deposits, or maybe could it be used in VHMS or other kinds of deposits? So most of the work we've done has been on porphyry systems. Around 40 sites probably have been studied in the work we've done, but we are working currently on similar propylitic alteration in high, intermediate and low sulfidation epithermal systems, where there's clearly similar kinds of gradients in chemistry and information that tells us something about the endowment of those systems as well. And we've done one small study on a volcanogenic massive sulfide system, more on a major element chemistry of chlorite rather than all the trace elements, but certainly there's mineral zonation in those kind of systems as well. And that's been previously documented, at least in terms of major element chemistry. So I think there's little doubt that the same techniques could be applicable in those environments, and also in orogenic gold systems as well, where you have similar kinds of minerals developed in the alteration halos. So it is a type of alteration assemblage that is widely developed in hydrothermal systems, and the mineral chemistry is potentially a useful tool for navigating and targeting within the low, relatively weakly altered parts of those systems before you've found the center.
Understood. Thank you. I've got a question coming through from Merlin, from a panel, a chat from Matt Javitt. Merlin, the question is, Ozos, what are you expecting to find there? And can you comment on your Lavaquira porphyry target and what you expect to find there?
Sure. When we talked about what our targets were at Los Osos, really we revert back to the Newmont style intersection as being a measure of success, and that's typically 100 gram meters. So anything from 100 meters at 1 gram a ton to 50 meters at 2 grams a ton, that would be considered to be a success. Equally, we had that, we know that the drilling at El Guayabo gave 150 meters at 2.6 grams a ton. So if we could replicate that on our side of the fence, that would be fantastic. That would be a significant play opener. But yes, we also know that the hydrothermal breccias that we can see at Los Osos are very similar to the hydrothermal breccias that one can see in the center of the Cangrejos deposit, and those typically run from 0.7 to 1 grams a ton. We've also seen, we know that they extend for up to 100 meters at least on our project area, sometimes 200 meters. And so if we drill through those and we get the mineralization that is consistent with the area, then you are approaching hundreds of meters or up to hundreds of meters with somewhere between 0.5 gram a ton and 1.5 grams a ton. And that would be a kind of a play opening success for us. As for drilling La Vaquera on the Curipamba project area, remember that Curipamba is the heart of Curipamba is a VMS, that's the El Domo project. The whole area was, when we were flying Pijili and Santiago recently on the geophysics, we flew 90% of the Curipamba project area as well, and that picked up a porphyry style target on the southwest of the license area. And we've just put out a news release saying that we're going into a joint news release with Adventus saying that we're going into infill drilling at El Domo and exploration drilling at La Vaquera. So that will be taking place over the coming weeks and months, and we should get results out towards the end of the year.
Thank you, Merlin. I'm just going to read out a question from Lucas Marshall, who asks Arlington, and Roger, if you feel free to jump in here if you'd like to. He asks, Arlington is a shareholder of the companies here, has had recent success. He's curious about what is our Arlington selection criteria for looking at copper explorers in which you choose to invest. Thank you, Lucas. So I'll just preface my response by saying anything that Roger or I say is not investment advice, but this is just decisions that we made retrospectively to invest in companies. Maybe start with Salazar, seeing as Merlin's smiling face is sitting in front of me. That's easy. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a young Canadian named Christian Cargill Samad, who worked for a startup company called Aventus, who came into our office and said, here are some amazing flashy drill holes. He was running a company called Aventus, which had been started by another Canadian company that people might know called Altius. And I looked at these drill holes and said, wow, those are very impressive. We're talking about double-digit percentage copper and double-digit gram gold intercepts. And I said, tell me about the project. Tell me if anybody else owns it. And the answer was Salazar. The reason we invested in Salazar was we understood that we bought in at a very low valuation at the time. 2 or 3 years ago, it was capitalized at around about $10 million Canadian. And we got all of the Salazar expertise and all the other exploration for free, and Aventus was paying the bills. With the benefit of hindsight, we can look back and see that Aventus' share price has not done as well as Salazar's, because Aventus pays the bills for Salazar's more mature projects, and we've still got all the upside of the 100% owned and larger targets, which are still to come. So, Lucas, that's the answer on Salazar. Using another brief example, a company which has just presented Kodiak. We are dear friends of Claudia and the Tornquist family, and we're lucky to have Roger Brewer, our wannabe geologist, in the group. And Roger's expertise and his passion indeed is to try and analyze his press releases and understand exactly what is the subject of today's panel discussion, which is how do you, like Jamie Wilkinson's science describes, interpret what these press releases mean and decide whether you think the drill hole is going to go into what could be a porphyry wealth-creating event. So, Lucas, I hope that answers your question. Have we got any further questions, either panelist to panelist, or Roger, do you have any further questions?
I think that's it for me. I just think phenomenal, all three just doing phenomenal work in this space. Really exciting time coming up for all three. So I can't wait to see more results from all of them. It's just a big thank you to everyone who's participated, and thank you to Jamie as well for his insight, which on what I think is a really interesting technology. Jamie, and thank you for explaining it to us. But from the investment point of view, just to that question from Lucas. So, I mean, I really think if you look structurally, I think that the copper space is so interesting. I kind of think of it as, you know, all compasses are pointing north as far as the big majors are concerned, and just as far as its long-term demand profile, which is what BHP talk about. And interesting to see Teck talk about moving their commodity suite away from some of their other commodities towards copper. And then it's about where you go looking. And as we had the discussion, you either can go into an area like Ecuador, which is so underexplored, which has so much potential, which three of our speakers, SolGold, Solaris, and Salazar are all there. But there's also the other approach, which you can take the Kodiak, Stavely, and Alkane approach, which you can go into other jurisdictions, which may be slightly more mature, but you can drill deeper, like Kodiak and Stavely are doing, and bingo. And as Claudia was saying, you've got all that infrastructure just around the corner, which is absolutely fantastic. But I think both of these equally valid, because the majors need this copper, and especially, you know, with BHP moving away from their hydrocarbons, they have to replace that growth and find growth. So I think it's such an exciting space.
Thank you, Roger. I've just got one more question here for Claudia. The question comes from Terence Ortsland. Regarding Teck, is there a standstill agreement, a limit to their investment, and the information sharing, is it exclusive? And do they participate in decision-making as a shareholder? Thank you, Claudia.
There is no exclusivity or anything like that, and they don't participate in the decision-making as in like having any board seats or technical committees or anything of that nature. They have a right to participate in future financings to maintain their shareholding, which in my books is a good thing, because obviously I would like them to invest further and provide us with a cornerstone investment in future financings. And other than that, it's a very cooperative relationship. They've been on site and have been working with our technical team, and it is of course great to get their input and their expertise, because they know the area like their back pocket with their large mine right around the corner.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, have we got any further questions around the panelists? With that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, for all of our attendees. We surprised ourselves with how popular today's event was. I think we will do it again one day in the near future, maybe when there's been a massive new discovery. Thank you to Professor Wilkinson, to Merlin and Claudia and Dan. We really appreciate your time, and to my partner Roger. In Australia, I think they've now gone to bed because it's approaching 2 a.m. in Sydney. Investability, if you need an IR firm or one that knows digital marketing, then Investability are number one for us. So thank you to all those people for making today possible, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Good luck with the drill bit.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Simon, Roger. Good to see you. Merlin.
Thanks so much.
Now.
Bye-bye.